Welcome back to Breaking the Silence. Breaking the Silence is a program brought to you by Spring of Hope. Spring of Hope believes that communities can do better, that communities can become resilient, they can become hopeful, they can thrive if we come together and we tackle issues of trauma. Our mandate is to really bring awareness of trauma and how it impacts us as children and as adults. Today we're joined by THEODORE Chinembiri. THEODORE is a trainer, she's a mother, and she's here to talk to us about her story. Telling stories is very important. It allows us to really unblock, unblock our minds, rethink things that we've gone through, discover ourselves, remove the misconceptions, the lies, if I can say, that we tell ourselves as children. It allows us to heal. It's a healing process, but it also allows others to learn from us and to grow from our stories. So welcome, Theo.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Can you tell me a little bit about yourself, just about your family, where you're from?
So I was born into a very large family, grew up in Highfield. I was the third girl in a family of 7. The first 6 were girls, and then our brother came last.
He must have been a spoiled boy.
Yes, definitely. And right now, he's the last one with 6 older sisters. You can imagine the kind of life he leads.
Yeah.
Then I got married very young. I got married when I was 20. I was married for 19 years. We had 4 beautiful children. Then we divorced in 2019 after 19 years of marriage. So I live with my 4 children, and the father is fully involved and fully responsible.
That is good.
No issues at all on the parenting front. As you said, I'm a trainer, consultant. I also do counseling, but I also run my own business, focusing on catering and baking. So my plate is very full with 4 children as well.
Yeah.
But I'm living my best life ever, and I would not change any detail of my life.
That is good. It's so refreshing to hear somebody
Thank
speak
you.
like that,
Thank you.
Especially in view of the reason why we're here.
Yeah.
The journey that you've walked from childhood. Tell us a little bit about that. Not a little bit, tell us.
Okay, so as I said, I was born the third girl in a family of 7 children, 6 girls and 1 boy. And our father was one of the founders of an African traditional church. We call them apostolic.
Okay.
And he was very involved in it. So our upbringing was quite, can I use the word legalistic? I'm sure you know the African traditional churches have a lot of rules and regulations.
Was this like apostolic faith? Like apostle like
exactly.
Yeah.
So one of the things I laugh about is we were in Highfield, and there were different sects or assemblies within Highfield. So at one point I was used to meet by Rothmans, where there is a cemetery in Mbare.
Oh, okay.
So we actually referred to as Highfield Yakmakova. And when I was older, it's kind of tickled me that we would worship in the near graves, and we're identified as Vekumakua.
Wow, talk about negative.
Yes. So church for me when I was that young represented a whole lot of prophecies, rituals. There were times when the prophets were referred to in Shona as Vemweya, the spiritual people. So Vemweya would come and say, for this problem, the children need to use margarine that we pray for. And would go to school smelling of stock margarine.
You'd have to grease your bodies with margarine.
Yes, sometimes we'd use cooking oil and things like that. So I have memories of many rituals, and they kind of feed into what I will talk about, my mental health issues and all. That upbringing, I feel like it already set us up at a certain level to then grow into adults in the society. But allow me to also say that I had a very happy childhood. Outside of that very religious environment in the home, we were very happy. Our father is a person who thrives on humor a lot, and all of us as his children, we laugh a lot. So I have memories of a lot of noise and laughter in the home. We're very close with our sisters, especially the older ones who were separated by 2 years. I'm sure you know my poster, they didn't use contraceptives. So it's made us very close. We are very protective of each other, very defensive of each other. It's quite difficult even for cousins to come in between us, and that kind of balanced out some of the emotional or mental health issues I had when I was younger. So feeding then into that, I really want you to understand that background where these are Mapo story who believe in having as many children as possible. They have a series of 6 girls. That is quite important. I know my father, when I was growing up, used to share things like, when we had the first 2 girls, we were so sure the third one would be a boy. So I kind of grew up thinking I should have been a boy. And that worked in my favor because I actually have a nickname with him. They call me Chanda Guinira. I grew up very tenacious because I wanted to prove that I should have been a boy. Yes. So they then had those 6 girls, and finally they then had our brother.
Were you the 5th girl?
No, I was the 3rd one.
Okay.
So I had then 3 younger sisters, and then they had the boy. I still have memories of a lot of celebrations, parties. We even have pictures where cousins came and gathered. Like literally the whole clan, my mother's side, my father's side, they celebrated the birth of the boy. However, when he was 3 months old, our mother passed away. And she was only 31. She was very young, 31, 7 kids. The baby.
How old were you?
I was 10 at that time. So the baby boy who was waited for, our firstborn was 14 years old, which means they waited for 14 years to have a boy. Finally, when he comes, 3 months, short-lived celebrations, she died. So for me, when I then zero in on myself, her death completely changed my life. It totally changed me. So these are things I'm sharing from a place of awareness. Now, when it happened, I didn't know. I was not aware that her death is completely changing my life. But now, looking back, I see the pattern. I see it clearly. And I've also had hours and hours in therapy.
That is good. But at that point, when your mother passed away, you were 10. There's a funeral, obviously, African traditional funerals.
We were Mapo story, remember?
Yes.
So let me tell you why that is the single biggest event in my life that has had the most profound, I don't even know what words to use, effect on me, impact on me. And you know, I believe that I'm the sum total of all the experiences I've had, but
that was a major one.
Yes.
You know, it's known that parental loss is one of the most traumatic events in a child's life. It's one of the most impactful adverse childhood experiences. And at that time, I wonder whether there was any knowledge of the impact that had on you. Do you feel like people understood that you were going through
So
the
that's
most?
actually what I want to zero in on. So this is what happened.
Yes.
We were a large family. By the time she died, unfortunately, we had lost a sister. So we're actually 5 girls and then the boy. And coincidentally, she was also a 3rd child in a family with 6 siblings. So, you know, we used to comment how her family mirrored our family as well. So what then happened is she had lovely sisters. You know, when you're growing up and you love your aunts, they'll take us on holidays. So I had a particular aunt who lived in the Avenues area. You know, when you live in the ghetto in Highfield, we called it Kuma Flats. It would seem like, you know, I remember the rides going there, seeing these tall buildings, and then just going up and down a flight of stairs. She lived on the 1st floor, was such an exciting adventure. I have memories of swinging up and down those stairs, skipping 4 stairs at a time, playing games. So all siblings enjoyed relationships with our aunts, but for me personally, I loved that particular aunt the most. So this is what happened. Our mother was sick for about a month before she passed on. The first 2 weeks she was home, they were praying for her, administering whatever, and then the last 2 weeks, her sister came one of the days. She had a fight with my dad and said, you are not taking her to hospital, you're using your African traditional ways of helping her. So she forcibly, in courts, obviously my dad agreed, took her. And this is what happened. When the last memory I have of my mother, the picture is so clear. She was wearing a grey skirt and a purple top. She's walking away towards the gate. I see my nini, her sister, opening the gate. She sits on the other side. My nini gets into the car and they go away. That was the last memory of my mom. So in those 2 weeks, they took her to hospital. She was hospitalized. At some point, maybe she was discharged to my nini's home and all, but that was the last time we saw her. So this is what happened in the 2 weeks when she was sick. As a child at 10, remember I loved my aunt. So there's this particular, so I would have thoughts where, you wonder, will mom come back? Because when people visit her in hospital, as children, we never saw her in hospital, they would come back and say, it wasn't looking good, that kind of thing. Some days they're saying she's better. So there's a particular day, I was taking a bath. In our bathroom, there was a mirror at the back. And then after the bath, I was combing my hair. So when I was taking the bath, I was having thoughts to myself. That particular time, I was saying, what if Mama dies? Does it mean we are going to be distributed among her siblings? Since they're the same number with us, I'm sure each of them will take one child each. And I hope my aunt Wekuma Flats will take me, and then I'll enjoy life there, and we'll be eating good food. So I'm having these thoughts. And then whilst I'm combing my hair, I hear a wail from the street, from the gate. Immediately, though I was young, I knew these people crying, and I could even hear voices, Mkoma wangu, Afa, Florence, Afa. So I then knew my mom has died. I froze in the bathroom. Time stood still for me. I actually remember holding my comb in my hair. And let me point out that one of the consequences I struggle with for my mental health issues is poor memory. But these things are so clear to me. I actually see myself in front of that mirror and I frozen. And the first thought that struck me was, I've killed my mother.
By my thoughts.
By my thoughts. That was the whole thing that turned my life around. I remember taking too long in the bathroom because now the wells are increasing. Our neighbors knew
coming in.
The mother of that home is sick. They are now coming in. I'm hearing a multiplication of people crying until somebody banged on the bathroom door and said, you've been there too long, come out. I actually believe that the child that opened that door and came out of the bathroom was completely different from the one who walked in. I was messed up. And then the adults around us, remember, they are mostly Mapostori. I don't even know if they had any knowledge about counseling or therapy. Nobody ever set us down to say your mom has passed on, what does it mean? So I remember at some point during that day, they made a decision that all kids from my age and younger should go to Kuma Flats for the duration of the funeral. Kids can't be here, there are many people will be coming. And Mapostori are very good at supporting each other. My mother was well celebrated, so they chose to take us out. So I do have memories of them going Kuma Flats. And the mistake they made, I don't fault them, it's things I'm learning now as an adult. They chose to give us people to watch over us. I think they were helpers for some of my aunts, and the helper as well for my aunt. They told them to entertain us, make us do dances, give us sweets, thinking that they make us forget what has happened. I don't think that was very wise because then we didn't process the funeral. So I remember spending 2 days, not more than 3, Kuma Flats with my cousins, full house. We had all the food we wanted, we're enjoying ourselves. We literally forgot that there's a funeral. Then my mother was buried in the village. The day they
Did you go to the village?
Yes, the day they took the body to Line State at home, they brought us back so that we could go to the village. I have memories, I even remember the dress I was wearing, it was a white and blue one. I have memories of getting into our yard, seeing people all over, and even in the street there were lots of cars. Then I stood at a spot where I could see into the lounge, and I see this huge cascade. So I'm thinking, is that where my mother is lying? Are people aware that I'm the one who killed her? Will the police come and look for me? I actually have a picture stuck in my head where I was standing and looking at that coffin, and I'm thinking, does she know I'm the one who killed her? How is she sleeping in there? Does she want to talk to me? Do I need to apologize? So many thoughts happened. And I'll point out and say one of the things I struggle with today is overthinking. I overthink things a lot. I'll think on something over and over and over again.
But before,
and it started there.
Oh, it started there. I was just about to ask if that had been your pattern
before her death. I have very happy memories of my childhood. I have nothing negative that I could ever tell you. I can't even tell you that I have a day where I was hit or spanked for anything. I just remember good things. Yes. But since the funeral, that's when I have all these other issues. So we then went to the village, and then another profound thing that happened is, when we go to the village, we have the main compound where my grandparents were. Then some of my father's siblings had their homes nearby. They chose again to say kids cannot be here. So we were taken to my uncle's place, and there were people looking after us, making us happy. So temporarily you forget that we've come for a funeral. Then we came to the time where they were doing the burial service. I have memories of the three of us, my two elder sisters. Remember, I'm the third one. So they said cutoff is myself. I'm old enough to do body viewing. So I remember walking the three of us to the room where the body was lying in state, and people were filing for body viewing. And my two sisters got in. I remember trying to take a step myself, and I got stuck. I literally froze standing there. And my sisters got in. I then hear them crying out as they come out, and I couldn't go in. I was so scared because in my young mind I was like, is mama going to say you've killed me? That kind of thing. So I have memories of my father getting up. He came and took me away and said, go back to my uncle's place.
Because in his mind, maybe you were not.
He just decided.
He didn't realize that you're carrying guilt to him.
No,
because you're
but
too young. You're too young to.
They actually thought she's afraid of a corpse. They didn't know that I froze
processing something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we went back to my uncle's place. Unbeknownst to us, they are now burying her. So that issue alone, there are two issues that happened when she's being buried. The first one, later on, I then had people say things like, Florence was looking beautiful, she was smiling, she looked peaceful, you almost felt like you could shake her up and say, wake up. So I then told myself that I refuse to see my mother smiling. People are saying she wasn't angry or mad. I should have gone in, I should have seen, I should have said goodbye. So that alone had a huge effect on me. But then the other bigger issue as well. During the burial, remember I referred to her sister coming to get her. Her family had not been happy with my father for not giving her medical help quickly. So they discussed among themselves and chose to effect a Shona custom that is called Kufuratira Guva. Loosely translated into English, it means turning your back on the grave. Basically, they have their own private meetings and agree that the moment the body is brought out for burial, they would already have taken their bags. Remember, they've been there maybe for the last couple of days waiting for the funeral. They turn their backs, start walking back towards their home.
Whilst the person is being buried.
Yes, whilst the procedure is going on. I'm not sure at which point, maybe by the gravesite or what, but unknown to my father's relatives, they simply turned around and went back, got into their cars, walked on foot, and turned away. So it's in Shona, the best way to explain it is kuramwa, vakuramwirai. But they do it at a point where it's possible to proceed and bury. It's different from a family that says we don't want to take part in it. Maybe the body's still at the mortuary. That becomes more complicated. This one is almost like they are saying, yes, go ahead and bury, but we are not part of it. So guess what? They all turned and went away, including my beloved aunts. Remember, it's everybody who's her relative.
Yeah.
So I didn't know it at that point, but afterwards, we then heard that they've done that, they are mad, they are what. And guess what? Later on in processing this, I killed my mother because I wanted to go and live with my aunt. But my aunt no longer loves us.
Me.
They are gone. That was a big deal for me. And I know for all our siblings in different measures, the way her family left us like that. Remember, we were so young. So the eldest was 14, my sister was 12, I was 10. The one we had lost came between me and the one who comes after. So when I was 10, the other one is 5, the next one is 3, and our brother is 3 months old. And this is a baby, remember.
Yeah.
And as an adult, I actually believe that if I were to leave an infant, the best person to look after them is maternal relatives,
Yes,
my sisters.
sisters,
But now
my
they've
mother.
gone. Everybody from the maternal side is gone. So it unleashed a spirit of rejection on all of us. We grew up feeling rejected. And remember, we didn't have the mental consciousness to know all these things. So we never shared. We never sat down together as siblings and said we struggle with rejection. Each of us has a story to tell. I can guarantee if you spoke to each of my siblings, we have our issues. I even used
to that rejection.
Yes, I even used to think that my brother, because he was a baby, he spared from all this. But one day I heard him talk about how when he was like around grade 1 and 2 and is now able to process or understand things, every time we went to family gatherings, people would say, "Ndiye wakusiwa?" This is the one who was left as a baby. And he says people would look at him and go like, shame. His mother left him so young. So he then grew up with that as well, that I'm the one who was left as a baby. And perhaps he may have thought he was the cause why my mother died. Because, you know, when a woman dies within a few months of giving birth, sometimes we think it's linked to that. So I remember...
So your aunties, your uncles never came back? Did they come back? Or like, I mean, in the period, like they...
So formally they didn't. Formally they never came back. Even now, this is 33 years later, they are not fully involved in our lives. The difference is then that, you know, even if you have a corporate agreement as a family, there are individuals who then make their own efforts. So we do have some kind of relationships with individuals, but officially they had cut us off. Even though they were involved, you know, the proceedings that happened, sharing the
clothes,
property.
So they came back for the...
That one is another issue. Yes, that one is another issue on its own, because this is what they did, which later on we actually decided was quite painful. They said, I hope you are aware that in some Shona customs, all the other ceremonies should be done where the person is buried. So they said to my father, we are not coming to Harare where you live to share her belongings. Bring the stuff to us in the village. And anyway, we are not coming to inspect as you pack. Rather, bring everything. And it will be us who decide that this is not hers, it belongs to children. We can take it back. So we literally had to pack everything. I remember a huge truck. And then, you know, I have memories of someone lifting up a plate and saying, Topan, who do we give this to? And this woman has left 6 young children from 3 months old to 14, but they literally took everything. On a lighter note, I remember that our mom had a deep freezer. It was given to my grandmother in the village where there is no electricity. And they would put tea bags in there, store sugar and stuff. Even the bed they slept on, they took it. And I remember some days our father would sleep on the floor, that kind of thing. So anyway, back to the funeral.
But you going through the process with your mom's property being distributed, as a child, what's going through your head though?
It's a whole jazz. So let me go back to the funeral. I wanted to point out that my father is quite stubborn. He then decided that he was going to raise his children alone. There had meetings where they said, who looks after the kids? I have memories of leaving the village after the funeral, and our father took all 6 of us. We went back home and there were echoes because most of the furniture and stuff has been taken. But he refused for us to be separated. And you know, for as long as I live, I'm forever grateful to my father. For all his mistakes or religious issues or whatever, one thing he did was he refused for the children to be separated. The only thing he relented to, his sister argued and said, even if you have a maid, you can't look after a 3-month-old. So I do remember that a few days after we went back to Harare, she came to our home. They fought a lot verbally, and she kept saying, I'm taking this baby, you can't do it. And I remember she put him on her back and took him, and she did well. She looked after her. I think he then came back into our lives when he was going for grade 1, I think. But he's got such a close relationship with my auntie. Actually, thought that was his mom when he was a baby. And I'm so grateful to her. We love our aunt. Like, you know, for me, my father and my aunt are almost like interchangeable. We love her totally for that. So my dad's side of the family gave him 100% support to raise us. And we have even cousins of his, we have very good relationships. That helped a lot. But the mom's side, they were completely absent when we were younger. So I have a whole lot of things I could mention, even with the sharing of the stuff. All this time, no one is explaining anything.
Exactly.
I have no memory of ever being sat down and told that, what did it mean that she has died? What does it mean that the baby was so happy? I actually remember at some point wondering if the baby is the one who killed her. Then, remember something? Kunevemweya from church.
Yes.
What I do remember is many countless gatherings and meetings in our home. Because remember, in their own way, they want to support this man who's recently been bereaved. So they would come for a lot of prayers. And then there would be a lot of prophecies being given. So some of the things we're told at that point was, people killed our mom because they were not happy that finally she's been blessed with the boy she's always wanted. So she had to die for that. And we even went to the extent of of receiving a prophecy, being told of the particular person who killed her. It was a cousin of hers, and I remember somebody explaining that she had been fed or given by this aunt peanut butter rice, and it had been laced with poison. That's what killed her. Guess what? I grew up not eating peanut butter. Nobody knows, but I actually hated peanut butter because I believed it killed my mom. Yeah, so you know we can't process these things, but when they do the prophecies, they insist on everybody being present. So imagine you're 10, you already blame yourself for killing this woman, and nobody explained anything. You refused to see her face and say goodbye, and you were so greedy, you wanted to live with your aunt and have a better life than living in the ghetto. But the aunt doesn't love you anymore, she doesn't speak to you anymore, she's not showing up. So all these things are going on in my young mind. I'm not processing them well, I'm just overthinking and overthinking.
You don't have the cognitive capacity to process it well, you know. I'm just thinking that, you know, even the way the whole process went, like you're at home, you hear wailing outside, people would not normally do that to an adult. You come and sit down with an adult and tell them, you know, it's a process of then telling them, actually, the person is gone.
Exactly.
So, but because you're
none
a
of
child,
that happened. Exactly. And one of the things that I can actually tell you is, I believe that a very short process, maybe even less than 10 minutes, could have changed my life. Totally. Do you know what I wish for? I wish somebody had said these words to me. Your mother loved all of you. As many as you. She kept having more kids because she actually loved you. There were many, I have a lot of evidence, even from pictures, that show us our mother loved us. For example, she was a tailor. She used to make matching clothes for all of us. So we have pictures where we are 4, 5, 6 as more kids are being added to the family. And you are all wearing similar clothes and all. So I wish somebody had said, your mother loved you so much to the extent that wherever she is, she's resting or lying peacefully or resting in the Lord. And she wishes she would actually have been here to raise you herself. She's not angry with any of you. None of you had anything to do with her death.
Because as a child, the tendency is to blame yourself.
Exactly.
For such
I feel like those few words
would have
changed, but nobody sat with us. Nobody said anything. And you know, other things that exacerbated the situation. I have memories of sitting with my dad, and he's saying to us, "It's important in Shona, obviously, that I tell you what." Wemweya said, what the prophet said. Apparently, people are still not happy with taking your mom. They are still wanting to come back and attack us. So there's a particular meeting I remember. We were 4 children. I'm sure the elder two must have been in school or boarding or whatever. Or the younger one was with my aunt and the elder one was at boarding. Then he says, so he is there and there are 4 of us. We are 5 in the room. He says, I've just received word from them where they said 4 graves have been dug for us. And then I'm a child. And you remember when you're a child, your dad is a big man, a tall giant, a hero. So I'm thinking my dad is always praying. He's covered because he knows how to pray. He's in good books with God. For us, the kids, there is a murderer like myself. We are doomed. So if there are 4 graves, it means there are for us as kids. So we lived in a lot of fear. So I'll refer to some of the issues I struggled with. Number one, as an adult, I struggled a lot with a guilt complex that stemmed from thinking I had killed my mother. My guilt complex is so terrible to the extent that even now, after lots of hours of therapy, one thing I can tell you is a very funny, small way in which I struggle. If I get into a bathroom and I find it messed up, it could be a public toilet I visited somewhere or what. If I find it messed up, my first thought is the next person who comes is going to think it's me. So I want to prove that it wasn't me. I clean it first. I have memories of being in public toilets that are terribly messed up and there's no tissue, and I even mess up my hands cleaning somebody's business because I don't want anyone to think it's me. That's something I have gotten therapy for, but even now I'm only comfortable in my own bathroom at home, and I actually don't like sharing bathrooms. Sometimes I wonder, is it because I was in the bathroom after taking a bath and this issue, but I have a problem with toilets. I have a problem with being in a bathroom.
It's a trigger of some sort.
Exactly.
Your mind is connected the bathroom.
Exactly. So I struggle in that area. So guilt complex is very huge. And another way in which it manifests is I apologize for things that I haven't done at all. The moment you show that you're not happy with me, whether you're a loved one in my life, you're in my inner circle, or a stranger, I want to prove that I am sorry and I want to make you happy. So I struggle with people pleasing. Yes, I want to make you happy at my own expense. That one was a very big deal for me, even in marriage. I would always put other people first, my husband first, my children first. I do not matter because after all, none of you is aware that I'm a murderer. So I need to make all of you happy so that you don't dig deeper into my life and see all these issues. Yes.
Did you feel like you managed to make people happy? Were you satisfied that I'm doing?
You know, when you're a people pleaser, you're never satisfied. You keep bending over backwards and doing more and more. So that has never worked for me. Then another big issue I struggle with is lately, I'd like to say in the last few years, I can see that it's improving. But I always feel like there is a group or committee of people watching me. I feel watched all the time, to the extent that if my sister brings the babies into my home and I'm looking after them, I overcompensate and try to be more nice than I should be because I feel like there are people watching me and judging me and saying, why are you doing this? And you know, as a caterer, I'm also a perfectionist, by the way. I'm sure you can link it.
Yes.
I am a recovering perfectionist. Ever since I became aware with therapy, I work on that. But as a caterer, I'm sure you know I need to maintain very high standards of cleanliness. Since I started my catering business in 2009, I've never had issues where people fell sick with the food or anything because I have very high standards. Perfectionism is actually one of the reasons why I believe my marriage failed, because I would be too controlling, wanting everything to be on point, to remove the chances of mistakes or problems or issues. Guess what? Because I always feel watched. Even when I'm cooking and nobody else is there, I feel like people are watching me, so let me make sure I'm very clean. So for example, my catering team, one thing they comment about me is that I overwash my hands. I'll wash my hands 15 times. So I'm cooking and I had to touch my phone. I need to wash my hands again. Nobody knows. I've never really shared it with anybody. That is because at the back of my mind, there are people assessing me 24/7, 100% of the time. I'm being watched, so I must make sure I'm prim and proper. I'm not supposed to do this. So you know, as individuals, there are things we do privately. For example, you might poke your nose, or you might your ears itch or something. When I do something like that, I actually have myself in check, because the people that are watching me say, why are you doing that? So you find
so you've got an inner critique.
I'm very harsh on myself. Ask anybody in my inner circle, they'll tell you that sometimes I do something and they're like, wow, this is wonderful. But to me, it's nothing, because I've already critiqued. Never good enough. And worse, if then I make a mistake and somebody just expresses. I'll give you a quick example. There's a lady that I did a wedding cake for, and so she wanted the whole jazz. It was a whole lot of cakes, and I think maybe 8 pieces. And then she wanted 120 boxes for everyone. So the cake, they would cut it and all, but they were already pre-packed pieces. Guess what? In the evening after a wedding, the first thing she said to me is, I'm not happy with the cake. Imagine I don't take criticism well and all. I burst into tears, and then I think she felt bad because this is a bride that I think should be on honeymoon. So remember, I overthink things. If she couldn't even focus on her own husband, and she had to tell me she's not happy with the cake, I took myself to task. And coincidentally, when I then did an audio saying, no, I'm so sorry, what was wrong? And then at the end I burst out crying. Though I cut it off, she heard I was crying. Perhaps she couldn't respond then. She then didn't respond the whole night. So guess what happened to me? I did not sleep. Sometimes if you say I didn't sleep, people think maybe you dozed off or something. The whole night until morning I was awake. I kept going over the cake. What was wrong with it? We tasted it. Generally I never sell food I've not tasted. So you know when you bake a cake, you have a chance to level the top. So I tasted everything. I followed her orders. What would be wrong? Then in the morning, she then sent an audio and she explained that she wasn't happy with the color. I had darkened the blue she wanted a little bit. So now perhaps because she was feeling guilty because I'd cried, she then also goes on to say, but you know what, I don't understand why you're crying. Everybody loved the cake. There were 120 people who ate the pieces and kept commenting that this is the best cake they've ever eaten. And your cakes were too big anyway. My husband commented and said the fruit cakes were too large. They were bigger than what we expected. The whole cake looked beautiful. My only challenge is the color was a bit too dark. And the only people who knew about the color were myself, my sister, and my husband. Everybody else didn't know that we had wanted. So now, you know, she's climbing down, but guess what she doesn't know is the damage is already done. That thing took me backwards.
And the way you're saying it to me, it's like in your mind you are now thinking, no, she's just
trying to be nice. Yes.
So you can't even receive the compliments that you've been given.
A year later, I then got a chance, maybe we were celebrating the anniversary, she got in touch and she said, do you give me permission to profile the cake on my Instagram? She was profiling all their service providers. The way she talks about that cake, oh my word. And I even had people who ordered from that because she said she was so happy. And you know, professional pictures, the way it was presented, it was beautiful. But guess what? Just after, around that period I done the cake, I think it took me backwards by about a week. I got into depression. I struggled with other orders. I'm not second guessing myself. And remember, I have a community of people watching me. You forget the good words she gave. Literally, the whole takeaway, her message was, thank you for the cake. We loved it. The taste was great. They were bigger than what we thought. Very good value for money. Just that we didn't like how the blue was a bit darker than what we wanted. I didn't hear that.
Yes,
I heard you're a terrible person. You couldn't follow the color. You are this, you are that. I overthink it. I go. So that's how. That's an example of how then I struggle. So I struggle with a guilt complex. I'm very harsh with myself, very critical of myself, perfectionism, very controlling. It's one of the things my ex-husband says of our marriage, that he found me too controlling. And he says,
because you want everything to be perfect.
To be perfect, I must make sure that people are pleased, and to increase my chances of pleasing everyone, let me control every outcome. And then I also struggle in terms of my catering and baking business, in terms of overworking. I could have a team of 10 people assisting me to do a job, but I must make sure I have a hand in everything so that I increase the chances of us doing everything to my standard. I struggle to trust people. It's only recently that I'm learning to go and lock my bedroom or even move away from home and leave the team working. I'll tell them, I'll come at 12, I want to find you done. If I'm within the premises, I am restless in the bedroom. I end up going to the kitchen and saying, is everything okay? So I've realized when I'm away from the home, they actually, sometimes they do a better job than myself. And yet I must always be there checking everything, and I end up overworking. So I struggle with exhaustion. I'm always fatigued and all. Then spirit of rejection is a big one. It affected me even in my relationships with men. I was not aware that I would project a victim mentality, be very needy, very vulnerable.
Do you love me? Do you really love me?
I need security. And the last thing that I'll share with you for now is this, which is a very big thing, like the toilet issue. The last picture I have of my mom, she was walking away from me. one thing I hate in my life is when a person is not pleased with me and they turn their back on me and they walk away.
Abandonment, fear of abandonment.
I do not like seeing someone's back. So if we are happy and talking like this, right now, if for any reason you have to go there, I'm fine with that. But if you've just expressed something negative, for example, you've said, no, Thea, that's not good enough, and then you turn your back on me, I'm reliving my mother walking away from me. I do not like a person who walks away from me when we have an issue. Look at me, shout at me, say the most evil words you could ever do, but keep looking at me. So even in our marriage, you know, over 19 years, obviously there were nights when we were not happy with each other. I did not want my husband to turn his back. I must go to sleep with him facing me. Then during the night he can turn, maybe I'm now asleep. That was a big deal. And then one other thing that happened, I'll tell you. In the 19 years we were married and had issues enough to lead to divorce. No matter what he had done, we had to sleep in the same room. There is no single day my ex would tell you that he slept on the couch, I asked him to leave or what. No matter how angry I am, and I'm not talking to him, I was very good with silent treatment. One of the complications I had. I could spend a whole week not talking to him, but let's sleep together, let's eat together. And even my children, they'll tell you that no matter how angry Mama is with us, she never punishes us by withholding anything. I don't withhold love, affection, food as a form of punishment. I actually had to learn to withdraw their gadgets for an hour or two, because if I withdraw something and I see someone is not happy, people pleasing, and then I'm like, no, I shouldn't. So I'd rather punish you with everything. So even if we are dealing with an issue of adultery and I'm so unhappy that I can hardly stand this man, we eat together. We go into the same. Yes, as much space between us. Don't even touch me, but I need to see you. To the extent that then affected me, and I'll share that later with you. The very first day he moved out because we have divorced, I struggled into depression because literally in 2 decades, this is my first time to have him turn his back on me. I'm the one who filed. He didn't even want to divorce. I'm the one who filed. I'm very happy the divorce has come through. He actually stayed home for 2 more months after the divorce had come through. But I'm the one who then said to him, we are no longer married, go away. And yet... The first night that I slept, half the wardrobes are empty. He's taken his things. Where our 2 toothbrushes used to be, his is missing. Where I would put his towels and my towels, his is missing. I felt like half of my life is ripped off simply because he is leaving home. And it's a coincidence that the day he left on the 1st of January in 2020. Our children had spent New Year's Eve elsewhere, so they were just the 2 of us home. Unfortunately, there's no way he could have left home without turning his back on me. So I also have stuck somewhere in my memory a picture of him walking away from me as I was in the lounge. He gets into his car, he drives off, and he's out of my life. So all these other issues and even more started the day my mother died.
Wow, yes. Wow. I think it all started, the wail, for me it was the wail. Mwana should never have to know about their parents' death in that manner.
Definitely. Yeah. And in addition, sit the children down.
Yes, sit the children down.
With them. And you know, I don't want to end this session and present everything that seems to be negative. One of the good things out of that is, remember I have 4 children, which is also a large family, having been born in a family of 7. One of the things that I do very well because of that childhood is my children share their feelings a lot. My youngest is grade 7, and she comes from school. The first word sometimes out of her mouth is, Mama, there is something that irritated or upset me at school. They actually have a very rich vocabulary of English words to express themselves. Because I hope you are aware that in our Shona language, people tend to overuse the word ndaboekana to represent a whole range of... So I've taught my children to say, saying ndaboekana does not cut it. They know the difference between I am upset and I'm feeling low. I am angry. Something happened at school, Mama, that affected me a lot and I ended up crying. You know, they share a lot.
A lot of times when people have been through trauma, what you went through was actually, it's trauma that then became complicated, right?
Yes,
you've been through
very complicated.
Yeah. A lot of times their voice is taken away they're not able to express themselves. Is it what you are able to do that? And I think it's something that naturally is you, but I think it's also you. Is it because you did work for you to be able to get to that place where you're able to express your feelings and even teach them to your children, and not transmit the trauma that you went through to your children? Or am I assuming that it hasn't been transferred to your children?
So can I tell you something? The long and short form of it is, for you to see me today and be a successful individual, behind me, between the day my mother died, all my problems, and today lies a lot of hard work. That's one thing that I feel like, or that I believe people don't really know or take for granted. For me to live at peace, knowing that I'm prone to depression, I'm prone to guilt, and yet I can still lead a successful life. It has taken painful work to deal with my issues. It has actually even taken a lot of money. For a season, I had to see a proper shrink, which was $100 per session, per hour. And I have had to put in the work. So sometimes people do identify themselves with having some of these issues, but if you're not willing to put in the hard work, it doesn't work. And also remember, for my 4 kids, they also went through divorce, and that's trauma on its own for them. So for me to have them today, they do have issues like every other child, but they are quite grounded enough to be successful in whatever they're doing. There's also a lot of hard work they've had to put in.
As well.
So I am aware that I work on myself, but at the same time I must also focus on my 4 individuals and make sure that they also don't carry issues from our divorce, issues for me. I even know, and they are aware, I've had to see them at some point, especially the girls. I have 2 girls and 2 boys, and told them that you are prone to depression because you inherited it from me. So when this happens, do this. For example, I'll end on this. My grade 7 child, she struggles with severe eczema. Very severe, as in it completely disfigures her face, and she faces a lot of bullying at work, at school. Just before schools opened last week, I noticed she started having issues. She didn't want to go back because her skin wasn't looking very good. We had a discussion where I ended up saying the words to her, would you like me to find you a therapist who's not me to look at you? Well, she claims that she feels very safe with me. So she keeps saying, no, Mama, I don't want to see anyone, but I want to talk to you. But I notice now she's not really getting me. So I said the very words I used with her were this: would you like me to arrange for someone who's not me to speak to you so that you are more free to say these things? Then she said yes. So I'm in the process of getting a therapy for that. And as much as I'm not happy with these issues, I'm happy she's able to tell me, and I quickly suggest counseling. Remember, she's 11. I was 10. Nobody ever sat with me. Nobody ever asked. So I have decided that I need to turn around what wasn't offered to me. Let me start with my own kids, and we start from there.
Can you tell me a little bit about what depression looks like for you?
Depression. That's a major one. I've been suicidal several times. Depression is a serious illness. There are times when I actually feel that the severity of depression, sometimes if we're to give it stages, when you hear that someone is on stage 3, stage 4 of cancer, it's very serious. I actually think that I've really sunk to stage 4, and it's God's grace that has brought me back. It's a lot of therapy, but depression for me is a huge deal. You would be shocked to actually know that the person who was out there and doing so well, 2 days later I was as low as actively making a plan to kill myself. So that's a big deal for me. It's a serious illness. However,
if you were to explain to someone who's listening, like, how would they identify that they're in depression? I know it's different for people, but in your case, what
so for me, this is what depression looks like. I don't want to come out of bed. That's number 1. I do not want to speak to anyone. I withdraw and retreat into myself, into my thoughts, overthinking, huge insomnia. I can go for 48 hours, no single moment of sleep, because I'm overthinking on something. I have no energy. I don't want to do anything. I don't want anyone to speak to me. I do not want to take a bath. I want to be in the dark. I'm not opening my windows. It has to be as dark as possible. So with therapy, I'm now aware. You actually start feeling like sinking. I wish I could really vividly describe it, but I feel like I'm getting into a corner or a hole or maybe
Or
a
wet
cave.
blanket is being put
Yes,
over.
and I'm
expressed it like that. Like I feel like a wet blanket,
something
a
heavy
wet blanket
is sucking me in. So before I would then feel like I'm helpless, I can't stop it. And there's something funny that happens. I hope I can explain it correctly. As bad as and negative and dark as the feelings are, it's actually quite comforting. Because remember, I have pain. So it feels like I am dealing or coping with the pain. So I'm retreating into this place, into this dark corner where I'm feeling safe. I'm feeling covered. It's enveloping me, taking me away from these people that have hurt me, from this world that has hurt me. And this is me. I'm getting
safe
sucked
place
in.
a way.
Safe in quotes. It's not
yes,
really
in quotes,
safe
for sure.
exactly. But I'm on my own. I'm with my thoughts. Nobody's arguing with me. Nobody's telling me. In that moment, it feels like empty words. Nobody's lying to me and saying, no, you're fine, you're doing well, things will get better. Nobody's forcing me to read scripture, to pray, or do anything. But I'm getting sucked in. So you then reach a stage where I can actually tell you that I'm firmly in there. I'm now in the hole.
Can you hear people when they're talking to you, or your mind is now shut off from the world?
Before therapy, I would not hear people. I could literally, whilst thinking like that, you could even come. And my mind cannot even comprehend that you drove all this way to come and be with me. Your coming is an irritation. Please just go back. And guess what? In that state, I learned the kind of words people want to hear that alert them that I'm okay. So I'll quickly give you a scenario. I'll tell you that I have a headache. And I've taken painkillers, so I should be fine. Otherwise, everything else is fine. So I might even say, Theo, is it not because of that which happened? Are you not feeling unhappy? No, I'm quite okay. Everything is fine. And you know, God is good. I can even quote scripture for you in that moment and tell you that I'm okay. I would like to say that in my whole 43 years of living, perhaps there are less than 3, not more than 3 individuals who can read through that and see that I'm lying.
You're down.
Everybody else actually believes that I'm okay. So if, for example, the family or a group of friends had sent you to check on me, you told them, no, she's perfectly fine. I even made sure she had eaten her food. Yes, she took her pills, her painkillers, and I left her sleeping. So I learned how to push people away.
So you can actually see somebody who's struggling, who's down with depression, but on the outside they look fine.
Very fine.
They are speaking.
I can even go and do something, whether it's speaking or teaching or do a catering job, and be smiling. At some point, I worked for a man who I was angry with for 2 whole months. One of the things he said to me when I then opened up and said, that day when you said this, you hurt me, he says, how do you have the ability to keep coming to work for 2 whole months and smile at me and be your regular self? None of us ever noticed that you are carrying this major pain. So it's one thing I'm aware of right now, and it's bad, it's good at the same time. I have the capacity to look like I'm doing now, and you think I'm 100% there, and yet I could be in a very dark hole right now, and you'd never pick it because I smile a lot. I'm a very active, robust, energetic individual. So as long as I have the capacity to project that to you, you think this is the usual Theo I know, and yet I'm in that hole.
In other words, it's as if you switch off your feelings.
I know how to control them. And the reason why I'm emphasizing this is I hope other people that listen can actually tell that you do have control. It's not really like you feel helpless. Because I actually know what I'm doing. I'm aware. And, you know, when I started getting therapy, I would even say the words to myself, Theo, don't go there. Don't go there. Don't stay like this. Don't keep thinking those things. It's not right for you. Because my therapist, for example, told me something like, tell yourself, I do not permit this thought to sit in my head. This is not a good thought. This is not the truth. The word says this. Or this person never said these words to me that they hate me. It's me magnifying this and saying they hate me. They don't feel like this towards me. So I know how to do that. Which means I have control. Yes.
Yeah, you challenge your thoughts and you just don't let anything come into your mind. And
you always... Okay, let me speak of myself. I always have the control. But sometimes the pull is so hard that you allow yourself to get in there. And I would actually like to believe, because I have been suicidal before, once a person is firmly in that dark hole, if they've not been equipped by prior counseling to pull themselves out, is the moment then when suicide becomes very attractive. Because I'll tell you, one of the thoughts I would think when I was very suicidal is, it would be so nice to sleep and never wake up again. It's actually a very good feeling. I don't know how to put it. You feel safe. The whole feels like, this is where I need to be. This is where I belong. There are no people talking to me or confronting me about anything. And even if you have girls, you have children, which is why it's not helpful for you to come and tell me, think of your kids. You don't even think of anybody in particular. It's not like when you're in that hole, you're like, what if my mother misses me? What if my children will be unable? No, you are alone with your thoughts. So in there,
it's a comfortable place.
I'm telling myself, I feel good. I'm comfortable. There is no pain. And later, another time, I'll talk about abusing painkillers. So I would know the ones that make me drowsy. So already remember, I'm chemically induced into drowsiness because I took 2 very strong painkillers. So that drowsy feeling is so nice. You are awake, but you know you're sinking into a restful thing. That pain, in that moment, I actually forget the subject or the thing that triggered my pain. So let's say you had shouted at me. I no longer think of you or how you shouted at me. The thoughts I have are, this is so good. What if I just sleep like this forever? It feels so good. I don't want to move from this place. Then I actually think in that state, if there's something nearby that I could use, then you could actually kill yourself. Yes.
So when did you start having depression? At what stage after your mom passed?
Maybe let me answer by saying I became aware that I have depression in 2013. I'd been married for 13 years. We had had some issues, and I went to a GP. He then says, I want to refer you to a psychiatrist. I fought with him. I said, I'm too intelligent for a psychiatrist. It's for dumb people, not people like me. But I kept being unwell. Then I went, and I still remember the day when that doctor said, I'm diagnosing you as depressed. And I said, what is depression? And he tried to explain, but initially I didn't receive it. Unfortunately for me, when I went back to church and shared with my pastor, you know, they knew I was unwell. And then I said, the doctor said I'm depressed. He said, they are wrong, Madimoni, there's nothing like that. So I then spent the next 2 years in denial, saying I'm not depressed. But
those feelings where you're just feeling like going into a corner and just having those feelings, did they start in 2013 when you were married, or they started when you were younger?
Oh, they started from, I would say, the first day of marriage. So, okay, let me backtrack and say, perhaps what triggered most the onslaught of depression was marriage. Remember, I said I married young at 20. And within 2 years, I have my first child. Within 10 years, I have 4 children. I was too young to handle that. I already had prior issues. Unfortunately, I'd also attracted somebody who was abusive and caught to me because, remember, I was very needy, very vulnerable. I've never had therapy. So I can link my depression to marriage.
Yes. Wow. Yes, it's a lot, and I look forward to us talking about the marriage the marriage and how it's impacted your mental health. But thank you so much for coming through today to talk about your childhood. I think the one thing that I take home from what we've discussed is that we still need to be aware that when a child loses a loved one, it's very traumatic. That trauma that they suffer as children, yes, maybe you might think it's a once-off, but it's made them vulnerable to more trauma.
Exactly.
So if anything else comes into their lives, they're not resilient. You've almost attacked their resilience, so that they're open to more trauma, and the effect of trauma is even more on them than a person who's just had a traumatic event for the first time.
Yep.
So Theo, I really look forward to chatting again. But thank you so much for giving us insight into the impact of parental loss on a child, on their on their adulthood, their outcome as an adult. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I've been happy to be here.
Thank you.